forum part be operational, do you think? Should be up. Make sure that that all works then. That sounds good. Well, everyone, thanks all for coming. Have some fun today. Aren't we glad we didn't try to do this last week? So, welcome to the 204th consecutive monthly service of the North Texas Church of Freethought. And if you're unusually numerate, you will recognize that that's a multiple of 12. So this is also the last service of the 17th year. So next month's our 17th birthday, beginning our 18th year services. So we like to say that I went a little bit too fast there. Anyway, 16 years, that's a good while, 17 years, but still not long enough for us to not get questions about what a church of atheists can be about. And as we say, we believe that we do religion right. We believe in one less deity than the traditional churches. And we believe that gods are really just thought experiments, and the people who take them for being any more real or any less useful in their way than Hamlet, Sherlock Holmes, James Bond, or Jean-Luc Picard, and too many others to name, well, those people just don't get it, which is, of course, what believers say about us, but there you are. Mark Twain said that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. The same is true of intellectual travel, of voyages of the mind, and expeditions of ideas that are the stuff of our Freethought liturgy. For thinking also is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. The travel analogy, interestingly, was used in the same sense by a 19th century British scientist and freethinker Thomas Henry Huxley. That was actually the guy who invented the term agnosticism to describe a non-dogmatic thinking sort of atheism. Huxley said, "Logical consequences are the scarecrows of fools and the beacons of wise men." So Freethought and the NTCOF is about religion without supernaturalism. It's about exploring what it is to be a human being, what we can understand or can discover of its meaning, what it is to be good, live well, and create happiness, and leave the world a little bit better than it might have been without us in it. Unlike some other religions, we don't advocate trying to do these things by handing over everything that's important, your mind and your own judgment and understanding, to someone else's interpretation of a text compiled by Bronze Age sheep herders, as Christopher Hitchens liked to put it. No, we ask you, and we ask you to help us make sense of things for ourselves. So Freethought doesn't claim to have all the answers, but it does claim that we already have the tools to think of the questions and evaluate those questions in light of facts and reason to get, as Karl Popper put it, closer to the truth. When it comes to food for thought, there's no greater banquet than Freethought. Now, some of us have a problem with the very word religion, but your religion is just whatever you think about these things. Don't let anyone rob you of that. Don't let the fact that questions of ultimate meaning, as the U.S. Supreme Court termed the object of religion, have been so mangled and abused and given such absurd and even evil, yes, evil answers by so many people who know or ought to know better. Don't let that persuade you that you, quote unquote, have no religion. Oh, you know, I forgot. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to start all over now. And there are other challenges for freethinkers who only a few centuries ago stopped being tortured and killed for their thought crimes. Today the penalties are only absurd and hateful prejudices and social ostracism. Hopefully we'll be able to overcome these things too in time. If there is a wave of the future, it should be the realization that we are divided by our beliefs and united by our doubts. The shrinking of the world with globalization brings travel, as Mark Twain understood it, contact with many kinds of people into the reach of almost everyone. It is getting harder and harder to live a life, as Twain put it, of, quote, vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime. So I think things are on the side of Freethought. People cannot deny facts and reason forever. Though, of course, there will always be a few who will believe, as Michael Shermer put it, in weird things. If we haven't created something like this, we are free thinkers working to understand and live by the rule of reason, enjoy fellowship, sharing our rational outlook and learning from each other, serving something larger than our own egos, caring and helping others through life's passages or who are hurting, and demonstrating that the rule of reason and a love for this one life we know is sufficient. So, we have some announcements. Today we have the Faithless Companions with us, sitting up front here. They're going to play a couple songs for us in just a moment. Next month, February 5th, back to the first Sunday of the month here at the Sheridan. And the Sheridan people appear to be able to accommodate us every month all year during 2012. They're not sure about January because of the Mayan calendar stuff, but anyway. We have lunch afterwards at the Golden Corral. If there's enough teens to get together, they may plan to do something also. Thank you so very much, all of our volunteers, even the folks who get here, well, definitely the band, and the folks who get here early to help out. John Hendricks, who's sitting way in the back there. Of course, Rusty and Sarah Nadel, who helped put together the website. You come up from Waco, right? What is your name again? Steve, I'm sorry. There's a guy at the hospital whose name is Steve, and I always call him Robert, and so I have some sort of brain thing going on with that. Thank you, Terry Doyle here for running the December service, and we want to press him into service. I understand that went really, really well. Maybe the battery is getting weak. Rusty and Sarah Nadel, thank you. Take a look at the website. And this is very brief before we get to the music. A moment of science, which we've had now for a while, the Sialoquake in human evolution. Now, as is well known, there's only about a 2 to 3% difference in the genome of humans, our DNA, as compared to our closest living relatives, the chimpanzees. Well, just this past October, researchers at University of California, San Diego published a study on how part of that difference may have arisen or how it began. It's been known for some time that the expression of carbohydrate molecules on the surfaces of our cells, specifically a kind of carbohydrate known as sialic acid, and shown here with the little diamond-shaped red things, so all little diamond-shaped red things are how the sialic acid is arranged on our cell membranes. There's only about 60 genes that control the biochemistry of this substance, and the key mutation that arose in our ancestors about 3 million years ago, right about the same time as the transition from Australopithecus to the genus Homo, was the loss of an enzyme that converts one type of sialic acid, new 5AC, to another, new 5GC. Now, keep in mind, I mean, this is what we look like on the cellular level. You know, we all look at each other and go, hey, you know, that's Sarah, that's Kathy. Well, the molecules on the surfaces of our cells are the same kind of thing. If you could be as small as a molecule and look at people's cells, you could say, oh, that's so-and-so, and that's a human, that's a dog, and so on. And that's how things work at the molecular level. At the top there you see the schematic for it's a neurominic acid, that's where the NEU comes from, 5AC, and then neurominic acid 5GC. And the only difference is this hydroxyl group right here. There's an OH here instead of just completely hydrogens. Now these molecules that are expressed on our cells can be very important. They play a part in cells properly recognizing one another. In fact, it appears that during embryonic development, humans have the ability to make and express this new 5GC, and human cancers do it too. But losing the new 5GC appears to have conferred a huge advantage on our ancestors, at least as adults. It goes away after we're born. It made our ancestors immune to the forms of malaria that existed at the time, and to which modern great apes are still subject. So here comes a malaria parasite. When we underwent that genetic change, they didn't recognize the cells, didn't have anywhere to hang on to. And you might also hear about sialic acid and neuraminidase, which is also important to the flu virus. So they take advantage of these recognition molecules. Well, subsequent mutations in the malaria organisms occurred, so there's sort of an arms race going on with microorganisms. So we're no longer immune to malaria parasites. But at the time, being immune to that disease was undoubtedly a huge advantage. Additional mutations in the 60 or so genes that control sialic acid metabolism took place in our ancestors, probably compensating for whatever disadvantages there might have been in having the initial mutation, so they're adjustment things. See, you never knew this before, and that's a new word too, sialic acid. Great password for computer things. Always good to know that stuff. Now here's another effect of the change that when our ancestors could no longer make this new 5GC, their immune systems would begin to recognize that molecule that they used to be able to make as a foreign molecule and produce antibodies against it, especially at the time when they began eating meat, because other animals make that new 5GC. Plants are not known to produce the substance, by the way. And so they were exposed to new 5GC and didn't have it. That's exactly the recipe for raising antibodies. And once our ancestors, especially our female ancestors, were making such antibodies, they would not be able to efficiently breed with others of their kind that still express that molecule. Here's a little picture of the sperms are trying to, these sperms are going to get through, but these sperms that have the old type thing are going to be recognized with antibodies and prevented from fertilizing. They've actually went ahead and did some breeding studies where they took mice and knocked out the ability to make this sialic acid, and sure enough, the breeding didn't happen as efficiently. So this event was really a speciation event, change that tended to reproductively isolate one group of organisms from another in a population and get us on our way. One of the researchers in this work termed the evolutionary turn the sialiquake, and it suggests how in evolution small changes that are selected for because of one reason can have larger effects that take things further in unexpected directions. Whether or how this change may have driven the further evolution of our ancestors, there's going to be working that out for a long time. But it's fascinating food for thought, both for human evolutionary biology and for thinking about how the unexpected happens. And that's really at the beginning of the new year what we can depend on. If you're going to make a prediction, something will happen that is unexpected, or it will happen in an unexpected way. And now we have some music from the Faithless Companions. There's a little blurb in the bulletin also about how they're going to be at the Blue Armadillo Winery. So if you like their music, or if you like wine, or both, on January 27th, it's in Princeton, Texas, which is between McKinney and Greenville on Highway 380. You can look it up on the internet. So we've got a couple songs for us this morning. Thank you so much for being able to join us.
Morning.
Morning. Good to be back.
1, 2, 3.
2 days past 18, he was waiting for the bus in his army. The green sat down. The captain there gave his order to the girl with the bow in her hair. He's a little shy, so she gives him a smile. He said, "Would you mind sitting down for a while and talking to me?" Okay, guys. Sorry, guys. Yeah. We gotta get the musicians on the same page.
Hey.
I went down and stuff to catch up with you.
Thank
Sound
you.
better? Now, at Princeton, when we play in a few weeks, we'll have a tip jar. When we make mistakes, we will find it.
We need to bring it back.
Yeah, I put it on. 1, 2, 3, 4.
2 days past 18, she was waiting for the bus in his army. The green sat down. The cafe there gave his order to the girl with the bow in her hair. He's a little shy, so she gives him a smile. He said, "Would you mind sitting down for a while and talking to
Freethought in song, and it's really cool. Really cool. Well, it's 2012, so as most of us have heard, it's the end of the world as we know it. There's a little bit more in the bulletin about this, and of course, it's not surprising that it's going to be the end of the world as we know it, because 2011 was the end of the world as we knew it then, right? So why would it be any different this year? But really, what is this world is ending on December 21st? I don't know if that's the right slide or not. Anyway, you all heard of this, December 21st. I think they even have the time of day. This is the work of people in the woo-woo New Age movement who are out to make money from the credulous. Or maybe people just love this sort of thing and take it only, what, half seriously, three-quarters seriously, which would make people who are cashing in on it the equivalent of stage musicians maybe, who are not as honest as magicians like Penn and Teller, who tell their audience that, hey folks, these are just tricks. We're fooling you, it's just for fun. Maybe like Penn and Teller, the tricks are entertaining even if you know they're tricks. But the problem with this deal is they're not very good tricks. You remember that guy last year, the radio evangelist who predicted the end of the world in May? And then I think he had some medical problems. Yeah, then he changed it to October. And since then he said that some kind of big spiritual something happened, but happened invisibly. It was kind of quiet. Kind of like what happened in the 19th century when Charles Taze Russell, the founder of what is now the Jehovah's Witnesses, said that Second Coming was going to take place in 1873, then he pushed it off a year, 1874. Then they got kind of embarrassed, and when 1914 came along, World War I broke out, they said, hey, this is definitely the beginning of the apocalypse for sure. And then when that whole thing ended, they said, well, it did happen, but secretly, invisibly. And so we're already living in the second dispensation or whatever. So anyways, doomsday predictions have been going on since New Testament times, and apparently well before that. Then, as now, they're asserted and believed on the basis of commitments to, or at least a willingness to entertain these theological and supernatural ideas. Unbelievers often focus too much on the old religions, though, and not so much on the New Age thinking, put that in quotes. Heck, I've known atheists who were into New Age beliefs. And these days, doomsday predictions are seldom, although they can be, as simple-minded as those in the past, such as in 1806, you really need to read up on this, a hen in England supposedly started laying eggs that had the message, Christ is coming, written on it. The hoaxer turned out to be somebody who was etching the eggs with some acid and then pushing them back up into the hen. That poor hen. Well, back in 1881, astronomers, they were beginning to identify molecules out in the void, and they were able to identify cyanogens related to cyanide in the tails of comets. So can you imagine what happened as Halley's Comet was expected to return in 1910, and people were speculating that the Earth would pass through the tail of the comet? H.G. Wells' science fiction novel, In the Days of the Comet, came out in 1906, so he was cashing in on things that other people were afraid of. Wells' story has the comet blanketing the Earth with a green fog that changes everyone for the better and ultimately creates a new utopia on Earth. Now, I like H.G. Wells, but I'm glad he didn't live to today. He might have been one of these Deepak Chopra people or something. Of course, that's not all what happened. Not what happened in 1997 when comet Hale-Bopp appeared and the New Age Woo-meisters claimed that an alien spacecraft was hiding in the tail. As a result, the end of the world did happen for the 39 members of the Heaven's Gate UFO religion who all committed suicide in the belief that that would get them on board the extraterrestrials vessel. Oh, and let's not forget Nostradamus. At least on the internet, Nostradamus fans are still talking about that quatrain in the guy's work that, quote, the king of terror will come from the sky. They were applying these words to what was supposedly going to happen at the turn of the century about 10 years ago. And that's standard modus operandi for such things. When the prophecy fails, you just use it all over again as soon as people kind of forget. And here I thought I'd explained this business, the king of terror coming from the skies, because I talked about this years ago. And I pointed out that, Stephen King's horror stories turned into movies are coming from the sky, right from satellites. So that fulfills the prophecy. End of story. Now, did Nostradamus even predict that anything would happen after 2012? I hope not, but if he did, how did the 2012 will be the end of the world because of the Mayan calendar, folks, explain that? Oh, I bet I know. the end of the world will be invisible. Nostradamus, by the way, would have been a young man of about age 21 in 1524 when many people in Europe expected a second worldwide flood based on astrological predictions and a variety of ideas related to the discovery of the Americas by Columbus. Columbus himself was said to have believed that his discoveries would bring about the apocalypse. So what is this business about the Mayan calendar coming to an end along with those ancient people's belief that this would mean the end of the world? Merlin's in back there. You probably know more about this calendar stuff. Maybe you should explain it, but see how this works. Do you think people would be embarrassed about making this Mayan calendar thing? But the truth is the Mayan calendar isn't ending. The Mayans had no expectations that the world would end in 2012 or in any other year. The Mayan calendar doesn't even run out. I mean, these were pretty bright people. They could count. You know, they could have another number after the one that corresponds to December 12th this year. In fact, they've even found Mayan texts that refer to future dates. Like in the 7th century, there was this King Pakal of Palenque who commissioned an inscription that said that his rule would be remembered and commemorated, just like we would say now, you know, the 1,000-year Reich, he said, would be commemorated on October 15th of 4772. They didn't use that date in their calendar. It was a nice, round, even number. So this long count calendar is simply based on a combination of base 20 and base 18 in such a way that a Baktun, which is 144,000 days, or about 394 years. And it will be that long since the last Baktun, sort of like on your car's odometer, you know, where it flips over, or the end of the month, but it's this strange base, so it's not easy for a lot of people to understand. The last Baktun rolled over on September 18th of 1618, and nothing happened then either. So the only end is one of these units of the Mayan calendars. It's like attaching cosmic importance to your car's odometer when it turns over to another zero. In fact, I remember as a kid, the family's Chevy Bel Air, we drove it around in a parking lot forward and reverse when it got to 100,000 miles just to see the zeros going back and forth. But it never occurred to us that the car would explode, you know, or something would happen. So when this whole business is over, you know, somebody can discover a calendar from ancient Atlantis or Lemuria that ends in another 10 to 20 years, because they're going to have to wait 394 years for another Baktun of the Mayan calendar. So anyway, there'll be plenty of time for them to rake in their cash from selling their books and going on TV and radio shows. Oh, but wait, there's more. The History Channel, I can't figure this out. The History Channel ran a show saying that the December 21st, 2012 date corresponds with the sun's, quote, aligning with the galactic center and rising in the dark rift of the Milky Way. This is from one of the woo-woo sites, so it's really exaggerated. But yeah, I mean, the solar system drifts above and below the galactic plane. And that happens every 26,000 years or so. It's on a 26,000 year cycle. And it's been calculated that we'll pass from one side to the other sometime between 1980 and 2016. So this special alignment, with its supposed risk of all sorts of natural disasters and even everybody being sucked into the black holes at the center of the galaxy, that's been going on every year for some time now, and will continue to go on for many more years. Moreover, there is no precise galactic equator. At no time will the sun actually eclipse the center of the galaxy from the vantage point of the Earth. And the dark rift in the Milky Way, you know, this darkened area, if you ever are out in a really great night sky, you can look at that as just fabulous view. The sun's going to be in that rift for over 100 years. And the rift is only opaque to visible light, by the way. Astronomers can see right through with infrared and ultraviolet. It's just dark interstellar material that has no more effect on the Earth than, in fact, less than a cloud passing overhead. You know, you're standing out and everything gets dark. Oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. No, it's just cloud wave from the sun. So what about predicted reversals of the Earth's magnetic poles and even its rotational axis? Well, the magnetic pole switching has been going on for the planet's entire history. There's no reason to suppose that it poses any threat, even if it happened, which is not going to, because the Earth's magnetic field is not anywhere near the reversal point right now or in the foreseeable future. It's not a regular thing, it's just a random reversals that happen from time to time. And also the reversals themselves, they don't just happen like we wake up one morning, oh, Earth's magnetic poles reversed last night. It can take hundreds or thousands of years for this to happen. The last one happened about 800,000 years ago, and millions of years can pass between reversals. Well, the magnetic poles wander about even now, and the Earth's, even when they switch, the Earth's magnetic field does not become zero. What happens is the field becomes disorganized. There might even be multiple north and south poles before things settle down again into something like what we have now. Also, no external force or galactic alignment can make it happen. It's a natural consequence of things going on in the Earth's core, currently thought to be this like immense mass of iron. So that's why the Earth is a magnet. Oh, this was just too good to pass up. I came across this on the internet. Since it's mildly relevant, I just got to share it with you. The Earth's magnetic field regulates everything from climate to ice caps and sea levels, joins all life on Earth from a blade of grass to an ant to a goldfish to a hamster to us. When many of us come together and create a common feeling, that experience is called coherence, which can actually be measured. It's 0.10 hertz.
It's the force.
If they can only get it to 2 digits, how real can it be? Right. So scientists first found out about this during 9/11 when our satellites, 22,000 miles in space, began to register changes in the magnetic field of the Earth when humans were having feelings about September 11th and the World Trade Center. So tell your kids, it better be good or the magnetic field of the Earth will be adversely affected. But wait, scientists are now building the sensors that can measure these magnetic fields and put them up onto the website where you can watch the fields change every day in real time. So that's it, we have found the force. It does seem strange, though, that just under 3,000 people being killed on 9/11 would create such a huge disturbance in the force, detectable by satellites monitoring the Earth's magnetic field, but not confirmed or seen when hundreds of thousands of people are killed in the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. I guess those people just don't matter as much as Americans. And shouldn't something like that be easier to study person by person or by ground-based instruments? I mean, if satellites in geosynchronous orbit 22,000 miles away can detect it, wouldn't we see here on Earth metal objects, like you start having feelings, some forks and knives that jump off the table, jump onto you, people will get hurt maybe, I don't know. What about the axis of the Earth changing? Well, like the magnetic poles, the Earth's rotational poles do wander a bit, but again, very slowly, and no more than a couple of degrees over tens of thousands of years. It would take a collision of the Earth with something close to its own size to set it spinning in a direction opposite to what it does now. Oh, but that's coming too, say the doomsday prophets. You see, there's this ancient astronauts writer who died in 2010 at age 90 who claimed that the planet Nibiru, that's shown on the right there, is out there. This guy promoted this whole scheme, very similar to the Manuel Velikovsky. How many know about Emmanuel Velikovsky? Okay, there's a few. Oh, there's great woo stuff out there, far weirder than even stuff in the Bible. Anyways, he had this whole thing going on about collisions of planetary bodies, but in this version, there's also a race of extraterrestrials from the planet Nibiru. Other people, including a UFO contactee, then predicted that Nibiru was going to sweep back into the inner solar system in 2003 and either collide with the Earth or cause natural disasters as part of one or more near misses. Oh, did you notice that didn't happen? So now they're linking this to the 2012 end of the world scenario, but the problem remains, Nibiru doesn't exist. Well, this doesn't exhaust the scary stuff that the doomsayers are threatening us with in 2012 and what they will continue to threaten us with in subsequent years once it doesn't happen in 2012. The sun is still going through its roughly 11-year sunspot cycle, and it's expected to hit its maximum actually in 2013, but they expect increased activity this year. And so 2012 is close enough, I guess. Such solar activity could wreak havoc with all the sophisticated electronics we now have on and orbiting around the Earth. We're probably not very smart in terms of how we design some of that, to not be resistant to some things that might happen, but it's not going to be the end of the world. Now, it's true that any of the half dozen to a dozen supervolcanoes, what geologists term megacalderas or large igneous provinces, may erupt. This shows the Yellowstone is a caldera, one of these super, and there's a lava creek eruption over here in California. And this shows the amount of coverage during their last eruptions. So these are not just volcanoes, they're like thousands of times more powerful than ordinary volcanoes. And the one in Yellowstone, it's been calculated that this mega caldera up there is what's fueling all that geothermal activity. That if it ever did go off, it could bury most of North America under 3 meters not inches or feet, 3 meters of ash if and when it ever goes off. So that's a credible threat, and more likely than a large asteroid or planetesimal impacting the Earth, but still not likely. The last such eruption was 74,000 years ago in Sumatra, and scientists estimate that such eruptions happen about every 100,000 to 700,000 years, so we're probably pretty safe in 2012. It seems a wonder, though, that there was no outcry because, some time ago scientists went out and drilled into an undersea megacaldera called the Shatsky Rise. And it's kind of funny that nobody got all upset about that. No drilling into that, that's going to cause the destruction of the Earth. The Large Hadron Collider has still not produced any mini black holes that could gobble up the Earth, but by the way, if ever such things were produced, they would be so small that they would take days to consume as much as 1 proton, and many billions of years to suck in as much as a milligram of matter. So for all we know, they did produce a few of these things, and right now they're gobbling up the Earth, but be a long time until that much of the Earth gets gobbled up, and probably the sun would go nova, or the sun's not going to go nova, but it's going to expand out like to the orbit of Mars before then. So I think those are all the main threats to planet Earth and life as we know it. None of them are either credible or apply particularly to 2012. And so my prediction is that none of these things are going to come to pass, and that the prophets of doom will fixate on some other future date or year. I hope that none of you, or people generally, are taking these claims seriously, and anyone who does take them seriously, I'd imagine, would be feeling some actual fear. Anybody know anybody that takes these things seriously? I mean, that's got to be scarier than something happening after you're dead. So very sadly, this is one sort of human folly that is not going to go away anytime soon, if ever. And how are we doing on time? Because the band said they would do another song for us. Got another little piece here on the future of religion. The popular wisdom is that the United States is the most religious nation on earth, but it turns out it's not at the top, at least if you measure it by church attendance. According to the World Values Survey, church attendance, once or more a week, is 89% in Nigeria. I don't know, what that is about. Does that have anything to do maybe with the fact that the FBI says that the second largest source of income into the whole country is these letter and email scams? Number 1 is oil, and number 2 is supposed to be that. Any of you got some emails about all the money you can get from? Yeah, right. I get them every day. So then 84% in Ireland, 68%, and this is attendance within the last week, in the Philippines. South Africa, Poland, Slovakia, Portugal, Mexico, and Italy are next, and then finally, the United States comes in at 44%. Tied with, of all places, you're not going to even guess this, Belgium. I thought all those European countries were completely non-religious. Japan and Russia have the lowest rates at 3% and 2%. But there's more to the story than this. Church attendance in the U.S. has been quoted at 40% or so for many years. But with population growth, this should mean that church attendance would grow proportionally, and it hasn't seemed to do that. And so the people who studied these things have recently started to gather their information a little bit more creatively. One sociologist explained. They did a study where they asked people, tell us everything you did in the last 24 hours so we can know what chemicals you might have been exposed to. We didn't do what most polls of religious belief do and ask, did you go to church in the last 7 days? Which some might interpret as being asked whether they were good people and good Christians. Yeah, so what was found that church attendance came down to 26% when they did it that way. Surveys conducted by actually counting attendance at churches have shown a slightly even lower rate at 23.9%. Now this shows the bars to the right are the conventional survey, and the gray is the time use survey. So there's a couple different countries, Great Britain. So everybody's exaggerating how much they're attending church, but look at Canada and the United States. Yeah, they're the biggest liars. So they call this social desirability bias, and clearly it's much worse in Canada than the United States. Why? Well, I think to ask that question is to answer it, isn't it? There is some information about what has happened with church attendance in the first decade of the 21st century that I could find online. The Washington Post reported this past September that the Faith Communities Today survey found that from 2000 to 2010, the median worship attendance at typical congregation decreased from 130 to 108. I don't know about you, but I always thought, typical would be 500, 1,000. They found that more than a quarter of congregations had 50 or fewer people attending in 2010, so we fit very comfortably in that on our smaller attendance Sundays. Also, these mega churches that get all this publicity, while their numbers have doubled, they still make up no more than 0.5% of all congregations. And at least 1/3 of members in more than half of mainline Protestant congregations are 65 or older. So yeah, maybe they should be called old line churches instead of mainline churches. The survey also looked at churches' involvement in voter programs. You know, this is the kind of thing we hear about. They're all out there trying to take over the government. Evangelical churches, indeed, involved in voter programs grew from 20 to 26%, while mainline congregations dropped from 16 to 12%. Half of non-black evangelical Protestant congregations with more than 450 weekly attendees are involved in election-related programs. So these figures do not bode well, with this attendance stuff at least, for the future of traditional religions in America. We know that the Catholic Church is hurting for clergy and nuns and so forth. They also suggest that churches are weaker than many would have it believed, but you know, this social desirability bias is a real problem. It's also a problem when it comes to understanding why people attend church. I found this on the Gallup site. Sociologists have theorized over the years that Americans may attend church because such behavior serves explicit social functions. Isn't that what we've been saying? The ability to socialize with other members of the community, making business contacts, developing friends, and maintaining one's presentation of self and status in the community. Those reasons may be accurate in some ways, but they are not explicitly acknowledged when churchgoers are asked to self-report on their reasons for their behavior. Only 13% of churchgoers provide this type of rationale in the current survey, and that's from attached to a 2007 Gallup numbers. So that's very interesting, and these sociologists are going to have to get more creative to really get to this, I think. So we don't really know the answers to many questions that could give some hint as to the future of religion generally, or in the U.S. specifically. You know, if there were no social desirability bias when it comes to religion, and in particular, if there were not so much animus directed towards atheists, there would be something more of a level playing field concerning church-going. And I think the larger question is whether if there were no social desirability bias, and especially if a large majority of the population were unbelievers, what proportion would attend a church like ours? We all would give social function answers to why we attend church, I think, wouldn't we? Maybe some of us, I know I would, might also say that we attend in order to learn something new, add something to our stock of ideas, to hear the faithless companions, and maybe pick up some tools for becoming better people. I suspect that getting and gathering with others might also depend on the other demands placed on us in our lives. Because we know what people say why they didn't go to church: at work, was up late last night. It's usually work and those kinds of responsibilities. Whatever the future of religion, I think that people will continue to be interested in religious questions, in questions of ultimate concern, as the Supreme Court put it, and especially, enlightenment in the broadest sense. There is much that we can learn from one another, and really, I think there's very little that we can learn without each other. Will impersonal ways of connecting ourselves eventually be all we need? Just books, magazines, radio, and television, and the internet? I doubt it. I think there's always going to be great value in us getting together face to face and talking about things that matter to us. So please think about that, and I think it definitely leaves some time for more music. And yes, Merlin.
Did you happen to look up the tsunami trash that's coming to us in the Pacific?
I did not. What is the deal with that?
Well, Japan had a problem, of course, and it washed a lot of things out to sea. And this trash is encompassed in a circle approximately 20 miles long, 5 to 8 miles wide, and it's coming to Oregon and Washington, and it'll be here by 2015.
Really?
Yes.
It's amazing that it would be kept to 5 to 8 miles away. You think it would really spread out, but
And it's got refrigerators and microwaves and automobiles, lots of houses and everything else in there.
wow.
And our government had estimated a $4 billion cleanup problem, but nobody wants to really start cleaning it up, so I guess they're going to wait until it hits the shore.
Oh.
Figure out what they're going to do with it.
It's always something, as Rosanna Dana used to say. The savings and loan debacle and the real estate thing. gonna have that. Maybe, is there something we can do to go out there and divert it to Canada? Maybe? Kind of go up there and sequester between Vancouver Island and the Canadian coastline. If only all those microwaves and refrigerators would work. Why would they not sink? Oh, strange. I'll have to go, something else for us to go look up on the internet.
I was thinking there's probably some foam in some of this.
Insulation,
Yeah, or, so they're just making refrigerators light enough. Well, we know the refrigerators can protect you from a nuclear blast. Didn't Indiana Jones or something like that survive it? All right. Well, we'd sure like to hear some more music. We'd sure like to hear another song. Not sure how we're doing on time again here, but anybody else have some comments? Things we ought to go look up on the internet? Trash coming from Japan. At least it won't be a bunch of religious stuff.
Trash may be radioactive as well.
It may be, and I hadn't thought about that, but that's one point.
We were thinking in terms of Janice this month, looking back, looking forward. So, a little song about a traveling soldier to honor our folks who went back from Iraq. And this one is about growing up and growing old, and I guess it's kind of looks forward and backward at the same time.
Child within my heart rise back. Can I sail through the changing ocean tide? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Ooh. I build my life around you, but time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. that. Our friend Gail DeLay, who we met here at this church. This was one of our popular songs that we sang here, so it means a lot to us. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for coming, and if you want to hear more of them, they're at the Blue River Mill, February 27th. By the way, anyone here remember Marcia Adams? Okay, John does. Jeff, she and Jeff used to be regular attendees, and Marcia's health kind of deteriorated, so that ended. They were big motorcycle fans. Marcia had been in the administration at Arlington Independent School Districts, and the teacher before that, just a wonderful lady. She died over the Christmas weekend. So she had terrible, really bad heart disease and diabetes, so we're going to be missing her too. We may see Jeff come back. I told Jeff, I said, well, you know, get lonely, come on back and reconnect with some of your friends, so we'll see. Anyways, I just want to remind everybody that Freethought is not free. We do have to pay for the hotel room. We're not paying anybody else out of anything that, any of the church money that is collected. It all goes to support our operations and things that we have to spend money on. I'll turn it back on. There's a whole bunch of reasons to give us your money, not only just because it's fun to get together here and you're the band and hear whatever I have to say, and I'd really like to hear what any of you have to say. So if you have some ideas on presentations, you know, it doesn't have to be very long. It can be 5 minutes. I even have material that I thought I would present today if something happened where something else blew up. But the big thing is we're doing together what none of us can really do on our own. Help us to promote your values, demonstrate your commitment, and be the future that you wish to see. So go in the joy of reason. Next month is February, which is church birthday, and also it's Valentine's Day, so a lot of times we'll play off of that, but who knows, something may happen between now and then. Yes?
Does that mean we get cake?
Yes, thank you so much for offering to bring us a birthday cake. All righty, that's good. And come on and join us afterwards now at the Golden Corral. By the way, how many newcomers here? You've been here before, haven't you? Okay. Love bomb these people, okay? Love bomb them, okay? So we have to absorb them into our cult. So anyways, join us at Golden Corral. It's the wide variety of food. It's, you know, it's not gourmet, but it's pretty good. It's kind of hard to ruin chicken. Talk with the rest of us, and I see that our Bible code guy didn't show up today, so we have a believer who's into the Bible. He's got his own version of the Bible code, so anyways, get together with us. There's lots of things that we'd like to talk about, catch up with people. Some of you I haven't seen in a while, so I'd like to catch up with you. If you don't know how to get to the Golden Corral, just check with one of us and we'll explain how, but it's just right up over here at the Great Mine Mills Mall. And so with that, let's go, as it says, go in the joy of reason. Thank you, and if anybody wants to help pull all the plugs and get things put away, that'd be great too. Yay!